Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. We'll be looking at the topic, the most expensive thing you are not measuring. And our facilitator for this evening is Abimbola Fisher. So I'll be introducing our facilitator this evening, Abimbola Fisher. And I would like to start by saying that he has a bachelor's degree in library science from the University of Ibadan. He is a certified professional in human resource. Additionally, he has built his career helping organizations understand some things they may overlook around culture and engagement and other HR concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, he also has a depth of experience in a number of specializations in HR that matter to every function and not just human capital alone. For example, he has ideas and insights around disengagement and weak organizational cultures and how they cost organizations even more. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking to us this evening on the topic, the most expensive thing you are not measuring. Let's welcome Abimbola Fisher.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Oluyemi, and thank you for the guidance before we started. So my name is Abimbola. I'll be taking us through this session, the most expensive thing you are not measuring. And looking at this discourse, I believe that at the end of this session, at least we will take at least one thing out of this class that will start to do much better in our respective workplace. So let's start. As I mentioned earlier before Dr. Oluyemi stepped in, most of the things that we'll be discussing here are not my thoughts. They are other people's thoughts, because I found out something earlier in my career that I think was one of the projects that we were working on in the beginning of my career. And the project was centered on, I think we were trying to develop competency models then. And there was some bit of excitement around it. And in the process, the business manager told me then that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, and I think that I've taken that as a professional along the way, that if there is an existing framework or if there are an existing thoughts around something, just work around how that existing framework fits into what you're trying to build, then use it. So that's why this quote is essential, that all wisdom is plagiarism, only stupidity is original. So what are we going to be discussing today? We'll be discussing what a dream organization looks like. We're looking at a financial case as to why culture is actually an asset and what type of culture are we supposed to have and what stage is your business at. At some point, say that camera fatigue is real, so we might have to take it. Then we'll be looking at some diagnostics too, and then some conditions, then how to measure and sustain the cultural assets that we have. Then we make some bit of commitment and then we close. For us to get a better experience around this, I know that some of us might be in transit or we might be in some places while listening to this. It's going to be better for us to engage this session by joining with our laptops. And the reason is because after now, I'm going to be sharing with us a workbook that we all will be working on together. So in the chat box, I'm going to be sending it there. Then you can look at it, fill it up, then we can have a conversation afterwards. But before we begin, there's a question I want to ask, which is, think of the best organizations you've worked in and what made you feel good in that organization. You might want to drop it in the chat box. Okay, Samuel Ajere says standard procedure. Does anybody want to drop what they took out of such organization? Humanity. Okay. Okay. Flexibility. I think we are getting there bit by bit. Okay, is that all? Or should we continue? All right. Some in a research, some people mentioned that a dream organization for them would be the fact that they could be themselves at work, which speaks to humanity. Another one also mentioned that I always knew what was happening. Someone said I felt my work was meaningful. Okay, Lawrence just shared cordial relationship, orderliness, and procedure, which speaks to work being meaningful, and also which speaks to um, knowing what was going on. The rules made sense. No one said I trusted the people around me, which also speaks to humanity. And I think flexibility still speaks to the rule making sense. Then my strengths were used, which speaks to utilization of whatever skill sets that you were hired for. So let's look at the financial case for culture. So I'm going to be sharing a document now, and then we will all look at it and then fill it in our respective places. So because after now, we'll start to talk about what the actual gap is and that thing that we're actually not measuring in an organization. So if you can see the document, just give me a thumbs up. Okay, so uh, please just read through and let's get your responses. So in 5-10 minutes is a Word document. There's some information that we are supposed to provide, and those information cuts across things around disengagement rates and the likes. So in the document, you'll be looking at things around the number of employees that you have, those that have left in voluntarily, and your average annual across the organization. Now, this data is for you. You are not sharing them with me. So it's just more or less like a workbook that you can work with by yourself. For us to make this discourse more interesting, you might want to put in some simulated figure, or you might want to put in the actual figure, but nobody's going to ask you for it. It's for you. You work with it, and then you end up knowing what that information is. Because at the end of the class, we want to ensure that you know what the actual costs of not measuring your culture is actually doing in your respective organization's balance sheets. So please let's proceed to engage the exercise. And if you have any questions, please just um, type in the chat box.
Hi, please, I have a question. Good evening.
Good evening. I can hear you.
Yeah, please, the document, I don't know if there's a way Dr. Luyemi can share on on the WhatsApp group because it's not editable and I can't forward or download
Okay,
from the chat here.
so that's why you have to use it from your laptop because the document, yes, is not editable. So the best way in which you can get value from the document is for you to click on the pad that says click or tab here to enter text.
But that only works on the laptop. I get. I think
Yes.
I'm joining on my phone. Thanks.
In the meantime, does anybody also have any questions or concern, or if you have some bit of challenge working around the workbook? Or if anyone has finished, you can as well also let me know so we can just move along. Okay, can we proceed now, please? So the document is in the chat box. So what you are supposed to do with the document is for you to fill it. It's for you, it's for your personal, it's a workbook for this class, or it's one of the workbooks for this class. So you're supposed to fill the document because it's going to lead us in the series of conversations that we'll be having around the subject of the most important thing that you're not measuring in the workplace. Do you understand now, Bimpe, Ajayi? So please, if anyone has finished or if you've attempted to fill some parts, please just let me know in the chat box so that we can proceed. We'll still come back to this document. Can anyone hear me? Not getting feedback. Can I proceed, please? Please, can I proceed? Please, can I proceed? Am I audible enough? All right. Okay. Thank you. So let's look at it. From the document that was shared, there's something called total shareholders return, which the top versus the bottom OHI portal has been able to reveal over the years. So there's a McKinsey document or there's a McKinsey research that was done, and then it showed this, and it's been a research in works for over 20 years. It was updated last 2 years, and there were some drivers in it that would also bear some bit of credence to the fact that what we consider value has also changed. So, which we'll also discuss. So, there is Standard & Poor's 500 market cap that revealed that the values of intangible, which culture is a part of, form up 92% of what you would call the real value or the real assets of organizations today. And then there was a research that was done by Phillips Consulting in 2023 when it was where the research was really speaking about the fact that 52% of Nigerian professionals cited toxic culture and limited development opportunities, kind of like was part of or was a major decider in them either leaving an organization or accelerating their JAPA plans. Now, from the document that I shared, some key drivers were stated, which is your turnover costs, which is annual levers, good levers, bad levers, multiplied by your average salary times 1.5. Disengagement costs, which you would see from your payroll. This is just the other figures there, which is 15% and 34% are just arbitrary numbers. So 15% speaks to maybe when you've done your audits for the year. Okay. Oh, you guys, you can't hear me clearly. Okay. So when you've done your, let's say your employee pulse survey for the year, and then you look at your disengagement cost from it. So your total payroll multiplied by 15% times 34%. Now, your productivity gap also would show you, so 34% in the OHI portal where you play in, then your productivity gap is also seen as the total revenue multiplied by the OHI percentage where you play in. So, which, if you look at it closely, a typical Nigerian business, which is benchmark, which is let's look at 100% working in that SME and making 500 million revenue, and has a bottom quartile OHI, which is 25%. And by the time you run the numbers, it's giving this organization a 263 million annual culture cost, which in most cases is actually not labeled on the P&L of that business because you can't actually quantify it, because most of the time we as HR professionals have not really been able to label that number because nobody's paying attention to it, or business just sees it as, because it's intangible, so you can't really put a figure to it. So now, one of the things that we'll be discussing in this session is for us to start to look at those numbers or those intangible elements and start putting a fixed figure to it. So, based on what we've discussed, so we are supposed to have a breakout session, but we can't have that. And then, and also we're supposed to compare, but since we can't do that, so let me just move along real quick. So, what is total shareholders return and all of these jargons that I've been saying? If you look at it closely, your total shareholders return just speaks to some of the things that you see when you go to NGX, that's Nigerian exchange group, and where you are either where they're trading commodities and all of those things, and then you're trying to look at numbers of SMEs that you have vis-a-vis how they are doing. So TSR can be applied to any business in Nigeria because every business is out there to get a wallet of the market share. And while he's trying to do that, there are some enabling things that are supposed to be put in place, which has compounding value over time. And the compounding value is dependent on how you run your system, how you run your structure, how you run your organization, then also how you actually label those non-financial elements. So at the end of the day, we find out that healthy organizations make better decisions, they retain people better, they serve customers better, and they recover faster. And over time, these advantages are the things that compound over time and make them an organization that you want to associate with, or an organization that you want to work in. So TSR is not just how you measure a compounding public company. It's also a measure as to how you also look at all the SMEs that you have around you, or MSMEs as the case may be. So we all understand what we call an EBITDA, that's earning before income tax, depreciation and amortization at the end of the year. And you could also find out that those enabling elements are embedded in your OHI outcome matrix. Your revenue growth is also stated, or and a driver of your revenue growth is also stated in your AHI performance matrix. So in the next 12 months, 18 months, if you run the performance matrix properly, you can actually quantify that, okay, this business is either going to grow by this particular percentage, still arbitrary in this quarter or next quarter or the next succeeding this thing, because some enabling things have been put in place. And then operational performance, and it's the same principle that the McKinsey uses as well. So I wanted to show some things around Churchill, which speaks to stages of organizations and all of that, but we'll still come back to it. Now, from the document that was shared with us, we'll find out that businesses are different phases of their existence. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you look at it closely, most of the time we tend to look at business professionals tend to look at business as in a one box or one size fits all, or when we want to talk about value chain analysis, and then we are talking about, okay, players in a particular industry that play together and all of those things. But we forget that businesses are at different growth stage, and at each different stage, there are different survival probabilities that are in place. However, organizations with healthy culture from the jump, from the beginning of that business, tend to do the right things from the go. So you find out that you have business in stage one, which are businesses that are just trying to exist. So you have startups, which are usually under 10 people, thereabouts. You have business in survival mode, which is 10 to 30 people. You have businesses that are in the success, they've grown, and then they are trying to be, or they started being successful. So now, don't look at the numbers of the list of maybe 30 people thereabouts. There are some businesses that have just 10 people, but they are at stage 5. And then there are some businesses that are over 100 people, and then they are still in stage 1, depending on however it is that they've structured the business. But the most important thing that this is trying to connect, or what this is trying to say, is that at each business element, there is there is an health matrix that you're supposed to use to define if the business is actually healthy or not, and those things that you're supposed to put in place. So, before we go further, I would like to ask us a quick question. So, who owns culture really? And please, you can drop the messages in the chat as well. Okay, Pinky says HR management. Okay. Please, this is supposed to be interactive. It's just only, okay, business leaders. Okay. Does anybody want to join us in this discourse? So who owns culture? Organization. Okay, top leadership. Okay. I think I'm in a safe space. So yes, business owns culture. HR is just only yes. Thank you, Folakemi Adebayo. So business leaders own the culture. HR just only enables and enforces the culture because it is what the business tells you or what the business has defined from the word go that you run with. Because oftentimes I have conversations with business leaders who will tell you that HR is supposed to enforce this, do that. And then you're looking at them like, no, you are supposed to define what you want. Then let HR then enforce or put to action those things that you have, those things that you, or those things that you see, or those things that you want about the organization. So, at the start of the business, let's imagine that it's a small business trying to prove its model. The founder does everything, which we all know. There is no system, there is no delegation. The business leaders and the founders are the same person. And at this point in time, the culture is the founder. The habits, the values, the whatever it is that the founder has described or whatever it is that the founder wants is what the business goes alongside to do. And then you have a major of this in your MSMEs and then the likes. Now, at survival stage, you find out that cash flow is a big deal. Now, if we don't have this understanding, sometimes some of the things that we complain about businesses and all of those things, about, okay, my business is not doing this, it's not doing that, and all of those things we would end up shortchanging ourselves, as the case may be. But once you hire the first person, or once you bring the first person into the organization, you've started to grow a system, though it might still be a bit informal. Now, the dominant culture in this kind of environment is usually built around personal trust, relationship, and all of those things. Now, by the time we go into the next class, or sorry, into the next exercise, we'll see the other elements around OHI and then how we can as well apply it here. So, small businesses that have survived the startup phase and which are very common in Nigeria, and in most cases, the loyalty is usually to the founder of the business. By the time the business gets to a stage 3, which is growth, or which is proper direction, you find out that the business is supposed to go through a phase where you stabilize, and then you start to have functional managers or line managers. Because in survival stage, you find out that maybe the finance person is the same person doing some bit of recruitment, and some bit of learning here and there, but by the time you get to that stage whereby, okay, you've stabilized, you're supposed to have proper line in place. And it is at this stage that critical behaviors are now being formalized. Now, the culture will start to get itself cemented in the way in which it is supposed to be, because now you have people, you have a proper operation in place, then at the end of the day, everybody is supposed to understand the strategy, and then this is where we are heading to as an organization. Now, for most successful SMEs or MSMEs in Nigeria, you find out that they've already reached that part where you hear something called product market fit. So the product or the value that you are offering is fit or is meeting a particular market demand. So now when you get to take off, you're looking at rapid growth, multiple functions, delegation becomes non-negotiable. So you can't do everything as a founder, you can't do everything as a functional head. So you have to delegate, and cash is under pressure again because you have operational costs, you have a lot of things that you need to pay for, you have tax issues, because it's at this stage that NRS starts to look at you from the shadows, and then they're coming for you if you've not put your books in place in form for you to be able to offset your company income tax and the likes. So, and when you look at whole HR accountability, you find out that accountability and coordination outcome becomes critical here if it does not get addressed. Now, there's still the element of the orga dynamics decision, which piles out at the top. Now, it's up to the business leaders to start to look at these gaps and start to work around it, because as new people come in, the culture gets diluted, the founding principles might get watered down. So sometimes people hide under the CEO said, the XYZ said, and all of those things in order for them to get things done. So it's usually a time for processes, policies, and all of those things to start to get itself embedded within the system. So Nigerian mid-sized private companies and successful scale-ups like companies here listed like Flutterwave and Co. You start to see that if you do not do something fast, the business growth might stall. Now, in resource maturity stage, you're looking at businesses that have had large established professional management, you have formal system, you have an history of sustained performance. And then the danger here is the fact that the so-called culture that led you to this place might end up becoming your undoing, because it becomes rigid. You are not flexible enough for you to move, and if you're not careful, competitor might catch up with you. A smaller business might catch up with you, like you saw in the case of the financial industry before. Some guys came up with financial fintech apps that we use today because they were becoming complacent in a way. Now, innovation and learning is key here. External orientation, looking at what is happening in the market space where you play in, becomes urgent and becomes important. And you have the companies listed here, the likes of Dangote, banks, and co, who have been able to live through this moment, and they are where they are today. So, reiterating this is the fact that at the survival stage, you're looking at, at your existence stage, you're looking at how to survive. And at your survival stage, you're looking at revenue per employee. There's a lot of pressure on cash, high turnover, error of rework, and all of those things. Customers most times are being lost by either there's cash leak, and which is oftentimes being driven by unhealthy culture, because sometimes people might decide to leave, move on, and all of those things. So every employee that you have within the business is more or less like you are saving money, especially if they are top performing employees. Now, the stage of success, you're looking at things around revenue per employee, and then the amount of time that you, as a founder, that you actually put on usually used in doing the grind of the job. Because at this stage, you're supposed to be at that level where you start to think strategically and looking at the end-to-end of the business and saying, okay, how do we grow? How do we generate more revenue? How do we win a sizable market and a sizable share in this market where we're playing? So there is the fork between growth and stability, and it's usually a culture decision. And it's usually a function of looking at your return on health, because the value of your return on health also influences how you're able to scale. Because if you have quality employees in different functions, it helps you to scale fast. But if those key employees are resigning, it gives some bit of drawback, and at the same time also start to make your customers question if you actually know what you are doing. Because imagine someone working on a project almost to completion, then the person ends up leaving. Then you hire someone, and then the person doesn't understand the project, doesn't understand the customer's temperament and all of those things. So rework, error of rework, and all of those things start to step in, and all of those things. So the founders, the percentage of the decisions that have been made without the founders' involvement would give you a proper insight into how healthy that particular business is. Now, at takeoff, you're looking at accounting things, which is your earning before income tax, depreciation and amortization, the margin between it, and then your strategy execution rate, how fast you are able to execute on a particular strategy, because you've built it in such a way, at takeoff stage, your business is in such safe hand that you can scale real quick and fast. And you are not bothered so much with survival as the case is. What you are trying to look at in this case is you're looking at your turnover, how much you're making, your coordination failures, and all of those things, if not managed properly, it's into your balance sheet. That's your profit and loss statement at the end of the year. And you're looking at things around what to measure, which is your strategy, are you able to execute it on time, your senior talents, how you're able to retain them. And then at maturity, you're looking at how you can do 3 times more, which is your TSR, and then your enterprise value, the multiple of it, which they usually measure in Nigerian Stock Exchange and the likes. And then at this stage, you're looking at the leading indicators 12 to 10 months before the market actually reflects it. Because if you've done an health check or if you sit down, you do a strategy where you look at your proper health check and all of those things, you can look at the leading indicators and decide that, okay, before the market reacts or before competitors react, we are in good hands or we are in safe hands. Now, you're looking at your enterprise value multiples and then your market share. So yeah, I would share another document which we'll work on, and then this is just for us to just fill. It has no numbers. So I'm sharing it right. Wait. Please confirm if you have it.
Let's here in the toilet bowl to move things around and see.
Sorry? Please confirm if you have the document. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Please, can anyone hear me? Can you confirm if you can hear me?
We are hearing you.
Okay, sir. Thank
I
you.
can hear from my end anyway.
Okay. So I just shared the document. So please just open it up and just look through, fill it. Then we can have a debrief on it before I proceed to the next stage. So what you're supposed to do with this document is you're supposed to fill, so there are some outcomes that you're supposed to fill. So you fill it as it is. The instruction is there. So you're supposed to score your organization as it is right now, not what you want it to be. You use your direct experience in filling it, or the things that you've been told and all of those things. If you're unsure about what number to use, you can use if you are caught in between, okay, should I give my organization 2 or 4? Just put the 2 down, because as I mentioned earlier, the document is for you. You can still look at the document after this session and then do a proper reflection around it. And at the end of the session, at the end of you filling the document, just add everything that you have under each outcome. and then you look at the average score. And whatever average score that you have at the end, just put it in the chat box so that we can then work with that together. Okay, thank you, Samuel. 7.3. So let's have a couple of more responses, then we then proceed. So Grace, the exercise is in the chat box. So if you read through the charts, you see the exercise. The one that I shared now is labeled OHI Diagnostic Survey. So if you can read the chat box, you see the exercise there. Okay, can we proceed now? Has any other person finished the activity so we can continue? Samuel has shared 7.3. Who else is done? Please, can I proceed or should I still wait? Okay, all right. So we've been talking OHI, OHI, OHI. So what really is OHI? So look at it as beginning or towards the end of the year. You're trying to do an health check. So you're looking at the different things or your vitals. Because you're trying to make sure that, okay, I know my cholesterol level, how my heart is beating, and all of those things that they consider vital checks and all of that for human being. It's the same thing as well that the McKinsey has been able to put up for organizations, you understand, which is in those formats in which I shared. Now, let me put a caveat here. That's a simulation. If you really want to run the full OHI, you have to contact them. They'll do it for you. But this is more or less like a simulation, but it will give you a something you can play with that can give you an idea of where your organization is in currently. But if you can speak to them, they'll actually do a proper full dive, the results, everything, then you would know, okay, this is where we are. So the essence of the OHI is that it's supposed to give you a leading indicator as to where your business is headed. Unlike your engagement survey that is being done by Gallup or Pulse survey and all of those things, that give you some elements of the lagging indicators after the fact. OHI gives you before the fact. So you can know in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year, in the next 18 months, where your business is headed culturally, where your business is headed in terms of the intangible bits. You can know in a year or in 6 months if your top employee or if your top performer will be leaving, because you are not asking you're not asking before the fact. You are asking before the fact questions. You're not asking questions in retrospection. So you're looking at, okay, how have I so if I'm able to open one here, so you're looking at things that speaks to the direction of the business. You're looking at things that speaks to leadership. You're looking at things that speaks to the work environment. You're looking at things that speaks to accountability, coordination and control, capabilities, motivation, innovation and learning, external orientation and external awareness, and all of those things. So at the end, it gives you a perfect picture of where the business is headed in terms of those intangible elements. And don't forget, it's those intangible elements that actually give you a competitive advantage in whatever space or whatever market you play in. So, as I mentioned earlier, a typical engagement survey just tells you if you are satisfied, if you are motivated, and all of those things, which is lagging, because by the time you are asking this question, an employee that wants to leave, or someone that the right capabilities that are supposed to help you to win in the marketplace, competitors have swapped in and then moved on for you. But the UHI measures the management practice that drive future performance, and it is oftentimes a leading indicator that predicts where you are going, not just where you are. Now, why this was chosen is because it's watertight, it is tested. They have over 8 million survey responses across 2,500 organizations globally. Every point in time that they've deployed it, and then the responses have always been 3 times shareholders return against I'm talking about deployed, then at the same time worked on those gaps that the OHI found out. So it gives you 3 times total shareholders return. You have 6 to 12 months time to manage those tangible performance after beginning the health check. So it's just like someone that you can predict that, okay, this person or this individual is going to have a stroke in future in 3 or 6 months. Same thing too with an organization. You can decide, okay, this organization might most likely go under if you don't quickly act on those things. So you deploy it, you go through the process, you see the results, then you start to know, okay, what are those corrective actions that we're supposed to put in place. Then it was launched in 2003, and recently there's been a refresh in 2024. So based on the answers that based on your scoring matrix or your scoring whatever it is that you scored after doing the overall score. So if you rated between 1 and 4.9, you're in the bottom quartile. And what it means is that your culture is actively working against your strategy, and you most likely have a talent churn. People will come and poach your top performers, and then your accountability exists only in name. But the good news is that the quartile has a whole lot of room to improve. And once you put in those corrective actions in place, which we'll discuss, direction oftentimes improves by plus 17 points, innovation and learning by 14 points, and then you have a 9-point average gain once you deploy it. If you score between 5 to 6.9, you are in the third quartile, and it means that there is moderate health issues. The direction or management direction or management practice direction is a bit unclear in practice. The leadership is inconsistent, accountability is more aspirational than real. Is in this kind of institutions that you find out that laws are for the junior employees. The senior employees are oftentimes not being punished when once they do not follow policies and procedures. And there's an example here, which is there's an European telecom which the survey was deployed for, an 8 out of 9 outcome in the third or fourth quarter before there was a transition. Now, execution usually drags is not that visible. In the second quarter, if you score between 7 to 8.9, so for Samuel who did it and his organization scored 7.3, you sit in the second quarter, which is good health. Real strength cuts across most of the outcome, but identifiable weakness that creates but there are some bit of identifiable weakness that could create execution drag. Now, the good thing is that the highest return on investment of where your health investment sits is relatively relatively, you just need to put in some bit of relatively small improvements in place that will end up producing large impact, like as shown here. You have the highest return on investment on your health work. Now, for people who score, for organizations that scored 9 to 10 percentile, your culture is genuine. There is genuine leadership, there's psychology of safety, there's real accountability, and you can actually sell your culture as a competitive weapon here, because is an asset for you, it's not a liability. And this is where sustained outperformance often become predictable. You can always know that, okay, this company will continue to do well year on year and all of those things if they sustain the practices that put them in that condition. And that's where you find out that you are doing 3 times more total shareholders return times the guys in the bottom quarter. Any questions before I proceed, or feedback? Because the room looks a lot quiet. Can anyone hear me? Hello? Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, so in each quarter, a lot of things would change once you understand that these are the deficiencies that exist, and it changes as fast as between 3 to 6 months. So once you're able to commit the leaders of the business into this conversation around this health check, it helps in ensuring that there is direction and strategic clarity across board. Innovation and learning improves as well, and then role clarity. Everybody knows what they are supposed to do part-time. Accountability is not going to be an issue. There's explicit communication, and then everybody knows what is going on. The part that might take a bit longer are things centered around the work environment. We speak to psychology of safety and accountability, because it's going to take a lot of work to apply consequence management to some senior people who this is their first time of being held accountable. And as well, there are other kind of people in an organization, which most of the time they call them informal network. Those are maybe for organizations that have been in business for, let's say, 15, 20, 30 years. There are some people that are the so-called informal stakeholders, and it's going to take a lot of drag. But if you're able to put those things in place and then sell what is actually going on to them, there's a framework for that, which they are, once they're able to come along, or once they're able to come around, you understand, you find out that in 12 to 24 months, you have them on board. Then coordination across silos. So for functions that would want to just do things in their space and all of those things, there's cross-functional convergence that actually takes place, which most of the time is not a quick fix. But once you know where the gaps are, where the bodies are buried, it's easier for you to scale and then move faster. Now, the things that are the hardest to shift there are the unspoken beliefs about how things work. And most times they require visible leadership contradictions over time. So this is where business leaders, top management will step in and then make those tough calls. Informal power structures, as I mentioned earlier, those guys within the organization that they will tell you the history even before you, especially if they have joined the business when the founder was just starting. So it becomes is our thing. You can't just tell me what to do. We've been doing it like this and all of those things. So, and once you're able to, they are the hardest to shift, but once you're able to move them as well, it becomes a plus for the business. So, if what the conversation was going on while the form was being filled. So if you look at this, if in your D1, which is, give me a second. D1 speaks to everyone in this organization can explain our strategy in the same language, regardless of their level of function. If that score is 3+ points lower than leaders make strategic priorities clear and communicate them, and people understand exactly how their daily work connects to what the organization is trying to achieve. If this one is lesser than this one is, if D1 is lesser than D2 and D3, it means that yes, your strategy exists, but it's not reaching the front line. And once this is not reaching the front line, it's as good as quite a number of things will end up being in disarray, because communication is supposed to flow across board. The communication mechanism is broken, but strategy is intact. On leadership, if the leadership is empowering, so people closest to work are genuinely trusted to make decisions within their area without everything escalating upwards. But it always calls low at modeling, which is leaders in this organization consistently model the behaviors they ask others of. And it's also low. It's also score lower than being decisive, which is leaders make decisions, they are clear, timely, and they follow through, not reversed, delay, or quietly abandoned. The gap is that there is an organ dynamics that is in place. So you have to look out for that. So yes, you get empowered, but at the same time, there is as the boss decides, or as the boss would say. Because if you look at it, really, leaders are supposed to model the behaviors that they ask of you. So if a leader is telling you to do this, and he or she is compromising in that same thing that is asking you to do, then it means that there is inconsistency in leadership behavior, which will end up creating an unhealthy organization. Now, in work environments, if psychology of safety which is typically lower in most organizations, which in most Nigerian organizations, especially when it comes to hierarchical, especially because we run an hierarchical structure. If that score is below 4, then there is no point for you to start to think about you want to create a culture transformation agenda, or you want to do a transformation, or you want to champion a culture initiative. Because look at it, people feel safe raising concerns, disagreeing with seniors, or admitting mistakes without fear of negative consequences. Once that safety element is out of it, tell me, what do you want to do? You can't do anything. So it means that you are still running an unhealthy culture. And so it also speaks to things around accountability, coordination, and all of those things. So find out that culture cannot be treated in isolation as to, okay, in isolation from leaders or in isolation from people being accountable or having the right capabilities, which is revealing to all, or having a strategy that is communicated down to the front line. The front line can say those same thing in the language that the CEO has stated it, not in the English that you expect, but the person can interpret it in his or her own words. And you check with the CEO, you check with leaders of the business, and then you check with, let's assume, a front desk person, and you can't separate it. It's different from cramming it. It's like this person has internalized what this business is about, the way in which the the heads of the business have communicated what the business is about to that individual. Are we still together?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So let's look at scenarios. So there is this organization, and let's imagine that they're FS Lagos. So it's a 180 financial servicing firm, financial services firm, and the MD makes all decisions above 500K. Senior management has not met in 6 weeks. Strategy was announced at January that all staff, where all staff were present, and since then it has not been mentioned. And the last person who publicly questioned a senior leader was moved on within 90 days. Of course, you end up finding out that there's going to be high turnover in that kind of organization. The best performing team lead resigned, citing limited growth, of course. And then the new 8 million naira performance management software was purchased, but no one has been trained to use it. And customer complaint is rising. So this was their score. So you end up finding out that it's 2.7, which is low percentile. So most times when a business is doing good or is doing well, it's a whole lot of gambits to it. And the crux of it actually sits with what culture really is about, or how you actually label the culture bits. In the exercise that we did, if the first one that speaks to the numbers, if we do it right, we find out that we'll end up understanding that, oh, this is the amount of money that we lose when we do not fix things around culture, which is one element. Now, there is another organization which we'll call them BR. It's a 65% construction and project management firm. But this is where it gets funny. Recently, I had 4 functional managers, and he's trying to delegate, but still get calls from most decisions because managers are uncertain of their authority. Now, whose fault? Well, value statements on websites, some employees know it, others do not. Performance review as serious at junior level. Per functionary performance, which is for senior staff, is oftentimes not paid attention to because, okay, they feel like we're above the distance. So strong repeats business from 4 anchor clients through personal relationship. So it means that once the founder of the business leaves or he exits, that business is going down. Now, staff describe culture as friendly but unclear. One of 4 functional managers is consistently undermining a colleague and that has not been confronted. And the founder works 65 hours weekly. If you recall, the part where we're talking about the stages of organizations, and then we're talking about things around existence, survival, and all of those things. So you find out that there is a correlation between what Churchill and co. had done, which was, I think it was done in 1983, and what we are beginning to see today in terms of the OHI score rating. So you can easily see why they are in the second or third quarter, because quite a number of things are not being put in place. And funny thing is, this is how most of organizations are today. So if you look at the exercises, it shows that direction is 5, leadership is 5, work environment is 5, and all of those things. So overall, you're looking at 5.2. Now, there is an organization in the top quartile, so we'll call them TF. It's a 40% technology servicing firm. It is on stage 3. That means it's in its growth stage and is about to scale. CEO holds monthly all hands where strategy, key metrics, and OKR's progress are being discussed, including what is not working, and it is shared with everyone. Decisions below 2 million are made by relevant team leads without escalation. So they have a free hand to decide on key things that would not really burden leadership. So they are empowered. Where a major project failed last year, the postmortem was shared company-wide, and they took lessons from it, and then they came up with a 3-process change implementation. A junior dev proposal became the firm's fastest growing revenue line, which means that communication is from ground up and also from top to bottom. Staff turnover last year was 8%. CEO was publicly challenged by a senior engineer in a strategy meeting, and he thanked them for it in the same meeting. 4 competitors platform monitors weekly. Service roadmap is adjusted quarterly. So there is a cadence of the things that makes things to move very fast. Nobody has an ego, or no, and at the same time, nobody's is looking over their shoulders. So at the end of the day, their model score is 7.7, which shows you, which is being reviewed here. So before we go to the next diagnostics, is there any question? Is there any concern? Or is there feedback? Please, can you hear me? Okay, so do we have questions, feedback, concerns? Or should I proceed? Okay. You want to say something, Ibrahim?
No, fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing the next diagnostics as well in the chat box. Then we get it done, and then we come back for a debrief. So basically, while we are opening this document, so I've shared it is there. And these diagnostics help us to see what kind of culture is actually in operation in our respective organization so that we can put a label to it and then decide that, okay, is this culture, does it complement the strategy of the organization? Because one of the mistakes that I think that professionals do today is to compare an organization with another organization without understanding the context of each individual organization. So what this is helping us to achieve is we're able to, by ourselves, do the diagnostics on our own, and then you can then now start to see, okay, my organization is a caring organization, oh, is a learning organization, is a performance-driven organization. So it's not just being written in the mission statement or in the value bit. You can label it yourself. You can document it. You can see it yourself. So that's the essence of this diagnostics. So please, let's go ahead and engage, and then we'll come back for a debrief. Please, as you're engaging, if you do not understand anything there or you need clarity, please just, you can speak so that I can provide this clarity. I think at the end of this exercise as well, someone from the team would have to just share with us what they have. Okay, so who wants to share? So who wants to share? Who is willing to share?
Perhaps you should go ahead.
Okay, because all right, because the essence is for us to know that okay, we are actually following, and at the same time, we are putting the exercises to work because it makes learning fun. But as you said, uh, good, cool, right. So, what this research identified is that if you take the diagnostics survey, you would see some things that it helps you in saying some things that actually resonates with any kind of organization that you work in. And then it also helps you to map your dominant culture style. So there is a dominant culture style, there is a co-dominant culture style. There is also a culture style that might as well be, you might want to label it, um, the kind of style that your strategy requires. That's if you scroll down the scoring summary. So there is a dominant style, there is a secondary dominant style, then there is the part where, okay, this is the kind of style that suits the strategy of my organization. That means that it also gives you an HR person the how do I put it now? Usually when they say that you're supposed to run HR as a business, so it helps you to understand, okay, this is the direction of the business and this is the kind of culture style or the kind of culture style that will suit what we are trying to build. So you can advise business accordingly and make them understand that, okay, if this is the direction that we want to go, this is the culture style that will help us in getting there faster than the ones that you've picked. So it gives you that bit of credibility. Yes, business will still decide, but you've made a valid input in it. And you are not just making that input based on how you feel, is evidence-based, is data, because the summary of your scoring of the scoring sheet of the kind of distinct culture archetype that speaks to your business, you are not saying it from your head. You are saying it from the data that you've deployed. Now, let me also say this. For most of the activities that we are doing, when we get to work tomorrow or maybe during the week, we can deploy it with the guys within our team or with an informal network of the guys within our team so that it helps you to start to make the right decision, which is data-driven, not just head knowledge decisions on the things that are important to the business and at the same time, things that is important to our respect to the HR function as well. So now this is looking at it across different Nigerian contexts. So you find out that a culture that is caring has its strength and at the same time has its risk, and this is across all culture. So it gives you a proper idea as to, okay, if I'm going to choose this is the pros and this is the cons. I can't have it all. Now, after we've completed the diagnostics, we are supposed to look at uh, which one fits us. And then we are supposed to look at, as I mentioned earlier, the one that fits the strategy of the business as well. So Now, I think that right where we are, we can, if we actually took the diagnostics um, exercise, we can write down what our dominant culture style is and the ones that our organization would actually require for it to be able to execute on its strategy. And once we can label it, we know that, okay, that's one management practice that we could change this week that could help us in closing the gap on looking at those things that, looking at those essential things that is actually not measured, that we can start to measure by ourselves. Now, how does this connect to AHI? The culture style tells you tells you the type of culture. OHI health quartiles tells you the quality of the culture. So a caring culture can be in the top quartile or in the bottom quartile, while a result culture can be healthy or toxic. So you need to run both diagnostics and then find out which one gives you a complete and accurate picture of where your business is at each point in time. We've looked at this. So now we'll be going into another exercise, but because of time, I would want to skip this and then just move on quickly. So we've looked at all of these elements, caring, purpose, learning, enjoyment, results, and all of those things. And this also speaks to the kind of organization that we actually have within our Nigerian space and how it actually plays out. So let's consolidate everything. So if you had the stage one, the existence stage, uh, one of the key culture that you might want to look at that can help you is, okay, which is typical of most of stage one businesses. If you actually looked at the diagnostics that I share, is there is that culture of caring. And if you are taking the OKAI diagnostics as well, it's complementary. So you find out that direction is high and accountability is present because the founder is the organization's default person, and then you are trying to build something that would last. Now, in stage two, you have businesses in survival, and then the key question there is, can we be viable? Can we break even? Can we start to get results? So the culture moves from caring to results. And if you are, let's, if there's an employee that started the business in its existence stage, and then and then you get to stage two, which is survival, and then they are telling you things around OKR or performance management. It starts to sound a bit, how did we get here? I thought this is how we used to do it. But unfortunately, at this stage of the business, this business is looking at a lot of things around accountability, results, and at the same time, if you are not able to, let's assume that an HR person, if you are not able to advise the business accordingly, you end up finding out that quite a number of things will start to be in disarray because you are at that breaking point that A2, if we did the OHI result, it tells you something about H2, quickly referenced as, give me a second. So A2 speaks to, people that do not meet the commitment that the business expects, and then you do not put in the required consequence because maybe the founder is scared of them and all of those things. So it's our responsibility as HR to make sure that if you commit to something, which oftentimes we are supposed to, is often reflected in maybe end of the month reports or quarterly appraisals and all of those things. So once those things are not being put in place, you start to lose the kind of traction that you would expect that will help you to transit into the next stage, which is the success stage. And yeah, the key question here is, can we manage what we've built? So the culture now moves from authority to results, and at the same time, the culture also moves to where you expect that quite a number of investments is being done in culture itself. So as an HR person, when you want to approach the business at this stage, you're approaching the business from a data set, you're approaching the business with key data that will help the business in making the required decision around its culture investments. At takeoff, what we are doing here is, can we manage the growth that we are getting, or can we manage the growth that we are seeing? So you are moving from results to learning. So you are learning about new things. Innovation is supposed to innovate. There should not be a lead on innovation at this point. And at the same time, there's a lot of dilution that starts coming because you are bringing in new ideas. You are looking at people that have done it outside, then you are bringing them on board to helping you to scale. Now, in maturity stage, you're trying to ask yourself if you can stay innovative, and then right here, you're not giving room to chances. So you're looking at things around order, you're looking at things around putting the right measures in place. And at the same time, you also risk culture calcification. So it is important that you rejig your health check every 12 to 18 months to see if you are still in tune with the realities that is actually um that is actually in front of you in the marketplace where you play in. Sorry, I'm going to skip this and then let's talk about how we then bring everything to bear as HR people. So, what exactly are we supposed to build towards? So, I mentioned in the beginning of the session that all of these things are just thoughts, frameworks, and all of those things around research and the likes that has been done that we can imbibe as HR people and then use it in our respective organizations. So, yeah, there is something called creating the best workplace on earth that Goffey and Jones worked on. And then they mentioned quite a number of interesting things. And I'll be sharing the diagnostics in the chat box as well. And please, if there is anything, please just try and engage this one because this gives you a proper line of sight between how to create the right enabling environment for your employees to thrive in the organization that you work in. So I've shared it, is in the chat box, and as mentioned earlier, if there are any questions, just let me know. So basically, you are scoring your organization twice, looking at what you are right now and then what you aspire to be. And it's also giving you so if your organization scores between 5 and 6, and you can put in it's more or less like you're neither here nor there, but basically you can still feel 5 or 6 because in the scoring sheets you have 1 to 4 and 7 to 10. But if you score between 5 and 6, you can put it there. Then once you score it, you're looking at minusing what your current reality is and what your aspired score is. And that's what you're filling inside the gap bits. So you're just filling the number there. Then also write in priorities if it's high, medium, or low for you, because at the end of the at the end of you filling it out, there are some bit of it gives you a proper idea as to, okay, this is where we are currently. These are the things that I'm supposed to start to put in place right now. So if you want to do your Q2 or Q3 strategy in closing out the year, it gives you a proper idea as to, okay, these are the key things that I'm supposed to do in terms of employees and the likes. So can we proceed now?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. So, hello, sir. Do you want to take us through what you scored? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, but you may proceed. I'm still on it.
Oh, yeah, you're still on it. Okay, all right. So, after scoring and all of that, it gives you uh, what your overall dream score is. And then it also helps you in identifying what the highest gap condition and then the experience that actually drove that score. So, in a lot of ways, if senior people or if you were to deploy this amongst our leadership team, you find out that the score that you have might be different from their own. Now, it's important that you know and then validate or do a deep dive and find out, okay, how come this person's score is a bit different than mine? That in itself gives you insight into what gaps currently exist within the organization. So if we recall at the beginning of the session, I asked the question, which is how many people have actually worked in an environment and then they had a wow experience and state the wow experience, and quite a number of people dropped some things in the comments. I think one person mentioned flexibility, one person mentioned there is a humanistic touch to it and all of those things. So these individuals came up together, that's Gaffey and Jones came up together and then asked hundreds of executives in surveys that they should describe their ideal organization. And then those ones gave them all the data that they needed. Then they mopped up the data. Then they find out something that people will not follow a leader that they feel is inauthentic. And to be an authentic leader, you first need to work in an authentic organization, which is true. Now, the underlying difference of circumstance, industry, and individual ambition found that there are 6 common imperatives. And together, they describe an organization that operates at its fullest potential by allowing people to do their best work. Now, let me put a caveat here. This is aspirational. So it has no bearing on any organization if any of these things are not being done. It's just for us to know what they are. And at least if we can pick one out of it and start to improve on it, then over time, we'll get to that state of perfection. Now, what makes this research what it is because every thing usually starts with leadership and the organization and all that. But this guy decided to start with employees and asking employees and senior management what will make them bring their best to work. Then the kind of conditions that must exist for any of those behaviors or processes to actually feel or for those processes to actually land. So the conditions that are hard to achieve and at the same time more durable. So you have 2 parallels. So this, as much as it is hard to achieve, those things can actually work. So the third bit around it is that there is credibility in this framework, and it's the reason why work in human capital is never finished because we'll still continue to refresh and refresh as long as the business exists. These conditions continue to exist, and it's just for us to keep ensuring that the inputs that give back to these conditions are being held, and then it continues to churn, gives us the best or the perfect results that we need. So the first bit around it is this: let people be themselves. Now, it's not talking about people making people act funny. It's just saying that make sure that you nurture individual differences and then they are not just tolerated. So quite a number of things that we do in HR supports this. So you have your IR audit and all of those things and all of those things which are written out here. The second bit around it is unleash the flow of information. So people want to be told what is going on. They don't want information to be suppressed, and do not expect that things are supposed to be filtered by hierarchy. And then our work as HR is to design formal, upward listening mechanism, create an anonymous channel. Maybe if someone wants to do some bit of whistleblowing, create proper grievance processes in place so that someone will not think, so that one person will not think that they are being aligned and all of those things. Then skip level structures, because most times it's uh, if an organization, if line managers want to contain, or if employees want to contain bad news, easy to contain, and then the business leads or the people running the business actually do not know. But if there are skip level conversations whereby you can move from the, let's say, the head of the unit, then skip the line manager to the person directly, it helps the person to actually know what is actually going on. And bear in mind that you are putting an organization that people do have the those elements, the work environment support psychology of safety. So the employee is not speaking, and then the next thing is saying maybe cold shoulders around him. He's speaking, he's saying what is on his mind, and business is able to act on it decisively without fear of maybe he or she is going to be punished or something like that. Now, magnifying people's strengths, organizations add value to employees rather than extracting, because sometimes I think that there is this element of extraction of value. What is this employee bringing to the table? At the same time, too, what this dream organization survey or the framework says is organizations that people want to associate themselves with would like that the business is supposed to magnify their strengths. So their strengths are supposed to be identified, developed, and deployed in the right condition, in the right states. Now, for us in HR, we're supposed to shift performance conversion from deficit naming. So you're not looking, when you're doing an appraisal, or once the appraisal committee sits with you and then you're looking at the scores of employees, what you're doing there is, okay, what strengths that the strengths that this employee have, how can we, sorry, the strength that this employee has, how can we amplify it in such a way that it will help the employee to perform better? Now, I know the questions that will be ringing at the back of our mind is business that patient? No, business is not that patient. But at the same time, these are the things that employees expect. So imagine you and I, we have this kind of opportunity whereby our strength is being magnified and all of that. Tell me, why won't we want to give our all and all of those things? Now, stand for more than shareholders value, because right now, businesses speak in terms of shareholders value, speak in terms of finance and all of those things. But if we as HR, we can really purpose the excavation, no, okay, why was this business established? Why is this business in this line of business or is in this kind of market. It helps us to get the authentic purpose, and then we can get employees that fits that mission, that understand that they are working for a purpose. Because usually, there is that bit of human nature. We want to feel connected to something that we know that has some bit of that has our back. So if we can connect to employees beyond shareholders' value, they are able to find genuine meaning in the work that they leave. The fifth one speaks to showing how the work makes sense every day. So every day, we are supposed to point the employees in seeing the clear line of sight between what they do every day and how they help the organization in achieving its overall objective. And finally, we're supposed to make rules that people can believe in. And that means audit your handbook, audit SOPs, audit quite a number of things. And then the ones that you know that nobody can really explain, like for instance, let's say meeting holds at the end of the day. It might only be required at a particular point in time of the context of the organization that might not be relevant right now. So audit it off and then simplify the ones that are actually difficult. Make it simple and make rationale for every rule and make it transparent to every individual around. Since we are not able to discuss this, I'm going to go real quick and then so as I mentioned earlier, let people be themselves. We should look at how to do some bit of audit hiring around confirmation bias, look at our JDs and look at, okay, how does it, what's the word now? How we should look at the inclusiveness that our job descriptions have, like label it or write it in such a way that it helps in an element that whoever it is that has been hired, or whoever it is that wants to carry out that responsibility, the individual differences that the person brings in is also being magnified while the person is carrying out those responsibilities. And quite a number of things come into play. Cognitive diversity in terms of maybe you're doing a psychometric evaluation before hiring, before interviews and all of those things. It helps us in seeing some of these things before the person joins the team. Designing formal upward listening mechanisms, making the right rationale behind every decision. In magnifying strengths, we are looking at redesigning the L&D function from being reactive filling to proactive strength building. So a training analysis comes, and then line managers want to fill it. We are supposed to educate them around, okay, rather than, yes, there is a gap that the person currently has, that the person is not able to fill his quota, but how can we also magnify the person's strength? So the individuals are not looking at themselves as there's something deficiently wrong with me, but at the same time, these are opportunities for improvement in alignment with the strengths that I also bring to the table. And I'll tell you for free. This is a lot of work. In standing for more than shareholders' value, we are testing the purpose claim against what is being lived. So you're asking 5 frontline employees how the purpose of the business, how they actually show up for it in their daily task. And at the same time, we are connecting every role description to the organization purpose. I think currently, most businesses do this. most people's OKRs or performance or KPIs actually reflect this, but it could still be much more better documented in such a way that employees feel that okay, they are doing more than just bringing money for the business. They feel that okay, they connect more to while the business exists. Now, in 5, you are looking at building a clear line of sight in every performance review, because you're trying to make sure that the daily work that the employee does actually makes sense to that employee. And 6th, which is the final bit, is the fact that are supposed to make rules that everybody can believe in. So distinguish between rules that protect the organization and rules that protect specific people's power. So you're supposed to examine it. Maybe there's a line manager or there's a manager that has been there from time immemorial, but because this is how the person wants things done, which is just a personal individual individual way of how he or she will want things to be done. So we are supposed to look at it vis-a-vis, okay, does this actually have a direct correlation on the rules that the business is trying to keep? If no, discard it. If yes, add it to the accepted rule of the business. So, in summary, the dream organization is not aspirational, and we always find out that our work in human capital is not to build this kind of organization in 90 days. Is for us to be able to build the right kind of infrastructure that makes that dream organization possible. One condition, as I mentioned earlier, one pilot, one conversation with line managers, one rule being removed at a time helps employees to feel a bit safe, feel a bit helps employees to bring their best to work every day. I'd love to go through the competence model around this, but let me just keep it to how we as human capital can actually architect everything that I've been saying. So first is this: run a diagnostics, which is very, very important. There are different diagnostics tools, and there are quite a number of them which I've shared in this session. And then present it to a business and then your head of finance before going ahead to build anything. There are usually this idea that people have also that think that, okay, I just want to jump into an initiative without running a diagnostics or without running a survey as to, okay, this is what I want to change. Is there a data that supports it before going ahead and getting it done? The second element around it is implement trust behaviors. There's a framework that was developed by Zach, and then there's also another baseline framework that was also done by the person, Edmondson. Edmondson is the person that did the psychology of safety. So right there in it, you can see that if you put in the right framework or the right trust architecture in place in terms of information sharing, in terms of everybody understanding what is expected of them and all of those things, it helps the business to win. It helps the business to remain healthy. It improves your culture rating. And our work is for us to architect it. Our work is to design it so that whatever it is that we are starting can survive. Purpose, infrastructure, as mentioned in the last discuss around the dream organization, lead purpose excavation with an authentic purpose from its history. our role is not to invent the purpose. Our role is to unearth that purpose where it currently resides so that we can use it as a marker in building the right systems that will help the organization in getting the right culture in place. Talent innovation is as simple as redesigning the entire HR value chain to unlock talent performance. So everything around the value chain in HR, hiring, onboarding, performance management, we should try to see how it can fit into the 6 conditions that we just discussed, which is which was developed by Kofi Jones. And in leadership enabling, as I mentioned, there's a competency model, which I'm not going to go into because of time. But what it actually says is that you should deploy in 90 days a development style program that everybody, most importantly, the leaders of the business are supposed to go through. Because in each element, you find out that as they say, a team is as strong as its weakest link. The line manager element, because line managers are supposed to uphold the culture of the business. So if there's a missing link there, if leaders are not properly educated, if they're not properly enabled and all of those things, quite a lot of things will be falling to the cracks. Our role as HR is to enforce, is to make sure that everybody is in sync. But if someone is not delivering in their respective function and the line manager covers the person up, and then let's assume business is thinking that this person is leaving, the line manager ends up resigning or maybe is on leave, then the person steps in. The gap starts to get, it becomes glaring. So our role is for us to enable leaders through education, through awareness, and all of those things, in ensuring that the right management practice is being put in place in their respective function, in their respective line. And systems alignment, our role as well is for us to audit every human capital system within the organization from time to time and remove what does not actually promote the right kind of culture that we expect. So if it was handed down, what do we remove? What do we keep? If you are just build from the ground up and see how each one of those elements gives you the ideal culture that the business has told you that they want, the kind of expectation that the business holders have laid on your desk. Now, how do we end up presenting all of this to our respective guys at the C-suite? So first thing is to lead with numbers and not just with methodologies and all of those things. So if we say that culture is actually costing the business a particular amount, we are supposed to find out why, label it, and then show how that calculation was reached, and then show them in explicit in an explicit way what will happen if we do not do something about it. So, because the language of business is finance, business wants to see that, okay, whatever it is that you're doing is not going to be impacting on cost. And once business sees that, okay, whatever it is that you're doing is not impacting on cost, is supposed to help them out in as much as they're going to make some bit of investment around it. It gives some bit of credibility to whatever it is that you're proposing. Now, always use your organization's data, and it means that you are not being generic, you are benchmarking, you are seeing how the result has real value to what it is that you are proposing. you are not saying that, okay, this organization or in as much as you can do benchmark that, okay, this is what is obtainable within my industry. But at the same time, you have your own set of data that gives you that bit of credibility. So for instance, you've done the health check, the numbers and all of those things. And you can show the business that, oh, I have 44% attrition rate, and this is what the industry rate is. And out of this 44% attrition rate, 20% of those that are leaving are either A players, B players, or C players. And for the guys in A players who are top performers, XYZ person is working on this project, this person is working on this project, this person is working on this project. It helps the business to sit down with you and see, okay, we are actually in this, how do we put out this fire that is about to engulf us, rather than just throwing data around or just speaking to it such a way that it does not connect to the business on reality. Now, present three components separately before combining them. Now, those three components were the things that we had looked at earlier, which is the turnover rates, which is disengagement rates, and at the same time, what it will actually cost for us in replacing someone that has gone or someone that is about to leave. So every challenge is supposed to be met with a reasonable answer, and it also helps in increasing the credibility of the final number. Fourth bit is framing the ROI explicitly. So the investment that we are about to get into is going to cost this. And the reason is because the annual costs of not changing it is this number. And this is the payback period. So when we want to engage in a culture investment conversation, let's say we want to do a team building or a team bonding, or we are trying to put in some things in place for top performing employees and all of those things. We are supposed to help the business see that this is not a welfare investment. It is a capital allocation that they are putting in place that will yield results in the future, or that will start to yield results once you get it done with. And then if you are also presenting to your board, you are supposed to use the real costs of you're supposed to use impactful numbers. So yeah, what this is actually trying to say is you are not playing around with the figures. You are not watching down the figure, as I mentioned earlier. You are looking at the actual value that the person brings in terms of naira and kobo to the business. And the reason why this exit or this thing is going to impact on the business bottom line if it's not being managed accordingly. So before we leave in this discourse, I would like to ask us in our respective workplace, or if you want to also share it in the chat box, what is one culture gap in your organization that you think that this session has named? And being honest, you have to label it so that you can know what to actually work with within the week. Secondly, what's one system or process or improvement that you like to change, and by when? And you have to be specific. So it's not just I will improve culture, that's not an answer, or I'll cancel one-on-one, that's not an answer. So one process, one system, one behavior that you change, just label it, write it out, either in the chat box or in your notepad, and look at it from time to time. And finally, who is going to be your accountability partner? So share what you've written out in 1 and 2 with someone. So write it out now, and then this is how I'm going to be, so that the person can hold you accountable. And we've come to the end. So if there are questions and feedback, let's have it.
Okay, fantastic. We have a question in the chat box, and Ali Ibrahim is saying, is there a difference between turnover rate and disengagement rate?
Yes, there's a difference. So turnover rate is usually what you want to call your attrition rate, people that leave and all that. Disengagement rate is what you look out for when you deploy either your pulse survey, your ENPS, employee net promoter score. It gives you an idea of how engaged your employees are. You understand? Once you deploy the survey organization-wide. Okay, you got it now. Okay. Any other question? You're welcome, Brian. Any other question or feedback?
We don't seem to have any feedback right now.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So I think that end it here.
Yes, I think this would be a convenient place for us to end it
Okay.
on this note tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly unmute and say a very big thank you to Abimbola Fisher for
Thank
the
you so much,
presentation.
Mr. Fisher. Thank you, sir. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Dr. Ade Oshono, too.
Thank you, Fisher. Doctor, thank you very much for this great opportunity.
Right, we're sure past time this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, do have a wonderful night rest. Good night, everyone. Bye.